All right, so before we start writing our CSS, let's talk about how we include it. Where do we actually write it in the first place? There are a couple of options for writing styles. I have them listed here. The first one is to write your styles directly in line in your HTML element. This is not at all a good idea, really, ever, but I'll show it to you. You may come across this. I'm going to make a new document. This one is called index.html. It's just a common name, just a sort of a standard homepage or main page for an application, but it can be named anything. I'm just going to add an element or two very quickly in here. So let's do a CSS intro, and then down below an H, one hello world, and I'll add a button as well. I am a button. Okay. So I can add styles directly in line to any of these elements like this. I could say styles equals, and then in here I could specify color should be purple. And when I open this up in my browser, here we go. It is indeed purple. And then if I have a button, I could do something like, how about background color will be pale green? Sure. Refresh the page. There we go. So this is not a great idea, mainly because it's really difficult. It's impossible to share these styles without duplicating them. For example, if I had another button on my website, another button, often we want them to be branded and styled the same way. So if I want this button to have green or pale green text, I have to duplicate this whole thing and put that in here. And then if we decide actually we don't want pale green, now we want just forest green or green. I'm going to have to change that in two places or in a real website. I might have a dozen or more buttons. I'd have to change them all individually. Also, I can't share these styles between documents. I might have 10 different pages or HTML documents for an application, and they all need to have the same styles. So this is not a good approach, but you may see it. The next option is to use the style element, which allows us to write CSS directly inside of our document, but not nested or not embedded in an element. So I'm going to get rid of this. So maybe I'll just comment this out so you can see inline styles bad. And then I'll add in something else in here, like let's do an H2. I'm an H2. And then what I can do is in my head, I can add a style element just like this, and I can write my CSS in here. Now, we still haven't seen much CSS at all, but I can write some in here, like make all H2s have a color of, how about pale violet red? And I will refresh, and there is my H2. It is pale violet red, and I could have multiple H2s now, and they will all share the same color. So this is an improvement upon this approach where I wrote my styles in quotes in each element because I had to duplicate that style for every similar element. So this is much better. I can style all H2s, but we still have the problem of if I have multiple documents, multiple pages on my website that I want to use the same styles, I would have to copy and paste this into each one. So the best approach, and the one you'll see the most, is to write your styles in an external style sheet. So we'll make a new file that's completely separate file where we write our CSS. It needs to end in .css as the file extension, and then we can include that file in our own document or any other document we make. So to do that first, I'm just going to comment this out. What we want to do is make our file, not new folder, new file, and I'm going to call this one probably app.css or my styles or styles.css, just anything.css. And I'm going to write the same exact rule that I wrote H2. Maybe we'll give it a different color. How about color of indigo? Just like that, and save this file. But I'm not done yet because these are not connected in any way. This HTML file knows nothing about that CSS file. We need to tell it about it using a new element called the link element. The link element goes into our head. So it's one of those things. Early on when I introduced the head, I said, we put the title in here, and this is where we include scripts and style sheets. Well, now we're including style sheets using the link element. So we write link, and then we specify an href attribute, which is the path, or it should be the location of the style sheet we're including. And then there's this rel equal style sheet. I don't think it's actually mandatory, but most editors will put that there for you. VS Code does, and you'll see it most frequently because there are other things you can include with a link tag. So let me just show you how we could do this. We would add our link, could just be hit link tab, and it does this for me. It already gives me rel equals style sheet, href equals, and the path where I can find this exact file, app.css. It's in the same folder. But just like before, with when we did images, we could have a nested styles / app. Now that doesn't exist. I don't have that folder, but I could, and I would use this syntax. So app CSS. These link tags always go in our head. They are meta information. The style sheet itself, that link element is not something we want to show up here. So we put them in the head. We set that ref attribute. Let's refresh. And now we're getting our indigo. H2, see, that tells us everything is working. So anytime you make a style sheet, app.css, style.css, or silly.css, it needs to end in CSS. Also notice I'm getting the syntax highlighting from VS Code, and then to include it in a separate document in an HTML file, use the link element and specify the ref attribute. We'll do that all the time. Follow that formula. Every single time you make a new style sheet, you need to connect it with a link element.